Welcome, listener. This is Sebastian Nothwell, joined today by Emma Denny. Hello, Emma.
Hello, it's wonderful to be here.
We're delighted to have you. Emma is the author of the queer medieval romances One Night in Heartswood, All the Painted Stars, and the upcoming novel A Vow Made Twice.
Yay. My medieval babes.
So, which of your books are you most excited to talk about today?
So, my most exciting one is A Vow Made Twice, which is coming out in February. And it's doubly exciting because for the first time it's getting a February release date for the UK and for the States, which has never happened.
Oh my god.
There's always a 6 month gap between my books coming out. And this time there's not, which I'm choosing to believe is a good sign. I am super excited about it. I took a bit of a risk with Vow. It's the third book in a series. The first one is male male, the second one is female female, and this one is polyamorous, male male non-binary. And I'm traditionally published. I'm with quite a big five, and I thought they're not going to let me get away with this. No way. And they did. And my first editor was extremely passionate about making sure it stayed poly. And yeah, I'm kind of amazed that it's even happened, as long with loving the characters and the story and wanting everyone to finally see how Ash's story wraps up. I'm also amazed that it's even gotten to this point. So yes, I'm very excited about Val.
I am excited as well. It's been a wild journey kind of through the Barden family, following their adventures and misadventures, falling in love.
Yes, mostly misadventures.
They have a very chaotic methodology.
They really do. I realised while writing Val that all three of them have issues with marriages and weddings. That's their through line. How everyone deals with the concept of a wedding, and the answer is really badly across the board.
Badly or inventively.
Yeah, inventively. I'm kind of begging everyone not to read too much into this.
Polyamory is already so rare, and male non-binary is an even rarer jewel, and I think you've really hit the nail on the head with this one.
Thank you.
It is joyful and complex, and you can really feel the love between all three characters in this triad.
Yes, that was the hardest part, I think, because it was easy. Two of the three were easy to kind of slide into, and then the third point of the triangle I struggled with a little bit more. And it is, you want it to be believable, but not too quick. You don't want it to be rushed. And yeah, I found it was so challenging, even just in terms of practicalities, like adding so many more words for a third character I hadn't really anticipated. But yeah, it was a labor of love. To make it happen, and completely accidentally. This is the problem. I'm not sure how much I can say because of spoilers, but one of the characters I'd kind of always envisioned Ash, his book being about some sort of marriage of convenience, something along those lines. And then through just fiddling about, this is when Heartswood was being written, I had a realization about Ash and some of his backstory and some of his characters in his backstory, and I was like, oh no, oh, this is going to make everything so much more complicated. And it did, but I'm glad it did, because it wouldn't be the same.
There's so much of the most delicious flavor of angst.
Oh yes, it starts with angst and it just kind of carries on all the way through. I keep saying it's like Ash falls into a hole at the start, and that's not the worst thing that's happened to him this week.
Falling into a hole was truly delightful to read, I have to say.
Yeah, I really wanted him to be like laid low. I wanted him to be having the worst time in the world, and then he is embarrassed and humiliated, and I wanted it to be almost slapstick, comical, the level to which he is fallen. And yeah, from the start I was like, he's got to fall in a hole. I don't know how I'm going to make this happen, but he's falling in a hole.
So how would you describe the premise in your own words?
Oh, this is hard. Again, jumping around spoilers. Ash inherits his father's title. He's become an earl, and with that comes the necessity to marry so he can have heirs and carry on the family line, because he's worried about his less savory members of his family taking over and ruining everything his dad's done, which means he has to find a wife, get married, and have babies, none of which he's particularly keen on. He finds the ideal match in Agnes Forret, who is a non-binary huntress, who is a widow, who uses she, her pronouns throughout the book just for medieval historical accuracy. I did a lot of research into that and went down many rabbit holes, and anyway, they agree to a marriage of convenience so she can kind of have her freedom and her power without her family breathing down her neck, and Ash can marry someone who he can trust to look after the Barden estate. This is all set in stone, and then they are attacked on the road on the way back to Dunlin Castle by a familiar face from Ash's past, and everything is thrown into complete chaos. and there's a murder subplot, which I keep forgetting about.
And there's a very intrigue heavy murder subplot.
Yes, I keep doing the marketing and I'm like, oh yeah, so it's marriage and convenience and it's second chance romance and it's poly and there's all of this. And I'm like, oh yeah, there's a murder. I'd forgotten about the murder.
There's fake relationship leading to real feelings.
Yes,
There's
the best. I love it. I love the fake relationship and then, oh no, what if the fake relationship is real? It's just so delicious. It's so much fun.
yearning in three directions at all times. It's fantastic.
Yes. Hard to keep up with though, when you're trying to count, make sure who's yearning for who.
So, what drives your storytelling and motivates you to write?
Oh, it's weird. I came into writing romance specifically through writing fan fiction, which I'm sure loads and loads of people do. And at that stage, it was the obsession. And I think that's what pushed me through Heartswood as well, is the obsession. The characters kind of took over, and I couldn't resist. I was thinking about, I mean, I still think about them all the time. And it was that sense of, I need to get this out, I need to get this written down, because they were just dancing around in my head all the time. And then as it's gone on, there's been a sense I want to complete this, I want everyone's story to be out. And I think I just like doing love stories. I like talking about people falling in love, and I've always coming up with ideas. I'll see something completely random and just think, oh, that would make a good romance. And in the pile it goes. And I think it's a sense of there are so many ideas and there are so many things I want to do that it all kind of builds up. And if I don't get it all out, I'll explode.
I know the feeling. I do find myself thinking fairly often, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a gay romance. Because, like, yeah, you do.
Absolutely. It's entirely true. I'm like, oh, well, that could be. Oh, and yeah, it's constant. And I'm always sending myself notes in Discord so I don't forget everything. I've reached the point now where I'm having to be a little bit more practically minded about it, which is a shame. My heart wants to write the fourth Heartswood book, but for various reasons that's not happening. Well, not yet. And so the tide of capitalism is pointing towards contemporary romance, which I am dipping my toe into now. And the ideas I've got, I love the characters, I love the setting specifically, but it is kind of balancing now that idea of what will actually get made with what I actually really, really want to write. So it's a little bit more difficult now, which isn't something they tell you about when you're studying creative writing at university.
No, they certainly don't.
Then again, when I was studying at university, they didn't like that I wrote romance either, so.
They never do, is the thing.
No, they never do. I was told that the romance I submitted, I was told it wasn't my voice.
What?
Yeah, I'd be very interested to see what they think now with 3 books out. So,
What?
yeah, I wasn't sure either.
Sorry, I'm very thrown by that. I don't know what.
Yes, I was rather confused. I think it was less that it wasn't my voice and more that it wasn't the sort of thing they wanted us to be writing because it wasn't lit fic.
It wasn't house style.
No, we had one genre author in the entire department who kind of popped in and out as and when, and he did sci-fi fantasy, and everyone else was like, no, no, you have to write real books. And I was like, oh, do I have to though? So yeah, it was, yeah. And yet somehow here I am writing romance.
Oh, no. Well, I'm very glad for it that you stuck it out.
Yes, so am I. It took a long time to get here. I did screenwriting for a while and swore off fiction for the longest time, and it was writing fanfic that got me back into it. So I have more to thank for the people on AO3 than I ever do any of my lecturers or tutors. So
I feel like that is so often the way.
it is. I think it's the sort of realm you're writing into, and at university it was quite constraining, and there were all these rules about what you can and cannot write, and being told, oh no, we don't do that here. Whereas AO3, you can just do whatever you want forever, and everyone's so passionate that it's a spirit that really it makes you want to write more because it's just so exciting. And I think that was lacking in my formal education.
I would very much concur. I had a professor at college who specifically forbade us from writing about vampires. I think possibly because this was the height of Twilight.
Oh,
and
no.
so everyone popping into the creative writing class was like, I also want to write vampires.
Yeah.
So I survived by writing an alternate universe where my vampire characters were humans.
Perfect.
And no one ever suspected.
Yeah, it was, I think, I can see why you'd get annoyed with many vampires after a while. I was quite lucky. By the time I got to my final year, I was in the screenwriting path where the rules were more whatever Hollywood likes, baby, which is mad stuff.
Yes.
And I ended up writing a zombie movie, which I got an amazing grade for. And I was like, I mean, the era of the zombie has really kind of gone now, but I was really pleased at the time because if I'd said that to one of my fiction tutors, they'd have been like, you can't write about zombies.
Zombie litfic is really something to consider.
Yeah. I mean, zombies are always a metaphor. It's just how much are you stretching that metaphor out?
Truly. What do you hope to accomplish with your stories?
Ooh, I mean, on a most basic level, I want people to read my books and achieve what I want to achieve when I'm reading a romance, which is you get that nice butterfly feeling and you feel like these characters are real people who are falling in love, and you read it and go, ah, it's nice. It's nice. And you have like an emotional response. I think that's the core part. I want there to be like an emotional response to my stories. And that doesn't have to be sobbing and huge emotional breakthroughs, just the buying into it, I think, is what I'm always aiming for on a kind of reader by reader basis. And then in a broader sense, I really want to, get more queer historicals out there and queer romances and have a little bit of everything. And I think we're in a really good space right now because there are so many queer romances out there in indie and self pub and in trad pub, and we're really not kind of wanting for options like we have been in the past. And I feel like now there's less pressure for each individual author to do everything
Yes.
and more to be able to just say, I'm here to have fun, which is what I think the core of romance often is that I'm here to have a good time and, go, oh, and have a feeling in your chest like these people are real people. And that's the fun part for me.
Absolutely co-signed. It is such a relief to not have to write the every story
Yes, exactly.
every time you sit down to the keyboard.
Yeah, you can just focus in now. And I think there is such a wide selection out there. And I think a lot of people say, oh, there's not. And it's like, you just have to find it. And it can be intimidating, especially at the moment if you're like on TikTok and Instagram and it's all algorithm. You have to put in the legwork, which is hard, but it is all out there. You just have to find it. And it makes life so much less stressful for individual authors who now don't have to be the perfect example of everyone.
Do you have a favorite character that you've created?
This is mean. So mean.
Possibly the cruelest question in my deck, and yet.
It's so cruel. I think probably my favorite character is probably Ash. I just love him. Like from Heartswood, I loved him and he's great. And I think this is another reason why writing Val was so hard, is because I had high expectations for Ash as well. And I was like, oh, my boy, I've got to make him perfect. And he is marvelous. And then I think it's tricky because as a pair, Raph and Pen are my favorites, which also feels terrible to say. I was recently looking for a commission. One of my friends has recently opened commissions, and they are an exceptional artist, really incredible, which therefore means relatively expensive, which is absolutely fine by me because it's amazing, but also means I can only get one. And I kind of had to put the show in of umming and ahhing about it because, like, oh, which one should I choose? Because I can't decide, but it was going to be Raph and Pen. It was always going to be Raph and Pen. So it's one of those ones that it feels cruel. It's like saying who's your favourite child. But I think Raph and Pen have the advantage of I wrote most of Heartswood reasonably in lockdown, kind of the tail end of all of that. And they really just got into my head in the way like a favourite character from a TV show does. And they just haven't let go. And it's been a really long time now, and I'm still thinking of AUs with them and things and little offshoots, and it just carries on. And I'm like, well, I guess they're in there forever now. And I don't know if that's just because of the stress of writing Heartswood or when it was or what, but yeah, they're in there now. Which means I have to struggle to make sure when I'm writing something else that they don't become Raph and Pen because it's easily done.
Everything's an alternate universe if you believe in yourself.
Yep.
What in particular makes you so drawn to these characters?
Don't know really. I think for Ash, it's because he's grumpy, and I love a grumpy boy. Grumpy on the outside, soft and sad on the inside is just such a fun character, and he's such an arse, and I just love that for him. Everyone else, you've got like snarky characters and you've got characters who will stand up for themselves, but Ash is just grumpy and he's just a bit of a wanker. And that's great. I love it. And I think the more I wrote his backstory when I was writing Heartswood, the more I kind of fell for him because he is, terrible, but he's got all of this sadness in his history and he's got this great lost love. And it's just, it's so fun and compelling. And I just love him. And then with Raph and Pen, I don't know what it is. There's just something about them. And like I said, I think this is possibly the stressful time. There was a pandemic on. They rewired my brain chemistry in some terrible way. But I have found like I then gravitate towards other media, books, films, TV, where it's, the strong knife guy and the sad heir who doesn't want power. It just keeps happening. And I'm like, oh, this has got Raph and Pen vibes.
What stories inspire you?
Ooh, I think specifically when it came to romance, a while ago I was kind of umming and ahhing over it, and the person who made me really think I can get into this, I think I could do this as well, was Cat Sebastian, and I think everyone says that because she's the best. Her writing is amazing, her characters are brilliant, I love the whole thing. Great, wonderful. And then I think more broadly, I've always been into more fantasy, sci-fi, Terry Pratchett, all the Discworlds, the sense of justice and the sense of humour has always inspired me. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I love, but specifically the radio play. Has to be the radio play. Things like watching Lord of the Rings obsessively as a kid. I think it kind of builds up a base for the ideas of, I think, things like justice and peace and people. And I think that kind of slips in to quite a lot of what you do and what I write in the end.
Absolutely. Lord of the Rings in particular, the films made such an impression.
Yeah, they got to me. I think it's that age when you watch them and you're like, oh no, this is everything now. This is my life. I feel like the best way to track it is by things I've had tattooed on me. So Lord of the Rings, Hitchhikers, Terry Pratchett, Doctor Who, the early new season of Doctor Who, was obsessed. And then, yeah, I think that sort of thing. I think it's the kind of the fantastical is what I've mostly really been inspired by growing up. And then, yeah, and I still am really, even if that's historical, I don't tend to read anything that's contemporary at all. And I think there's always been that level of unreality, which I find most engaging.
It is such a joy to visit another world and just kind of dwell in there for a bit and reflect.
Yes, it is. It really is. It's that sense of like, nothing can touch me here. Like in the real world, I've got phone and the news cycle and Instagram and everything. And I think sometimes it's nice to just have something where none of that exists or only exists at a distance. That's what makes it appealing, I think. And it's nice to have that escape where you don't have to think about all of these things. It's the same but different. And I think, simpler in a very broader sense of the word.
Very much so, yes. What's the number one thing you want readers to take away from your books?
Ooh, I feel like I should be saying something grand and admirable, like I want people to, understand that queer love stories are just like all love stories and they're just as important. And I do, to a certain extent. And I also, think it's important for people to take away that queer people have always existed. But I feel if that was the take home, they'd be reading a history book. They'd be reading something which gives evidence for this rather than just me making up some guys who kiss. So I think what I really want people to take away from my books is a sense of believing in the love story, believing in the characters, of feeling emotionally compromised in some way by my words, I think is what I really want. And I think these two things can go hand in hand. I think it's important to be able to say both. I want people to completely normalize the concept of queer romance, especially historical queer romance, but also to find it moving in some way. And I think this can be difficult with certain audiences. I find that audiences who are predominantly like cis and straight often have issue buying into a queer romance in a way that they don't with a cishet romance, I find is like an issue. And I think if I can get all audiences, especially those who wouldn't normally be in this space, to buy into the romance, I think that's the goal.
I think that's a splendid goal.
Thank you. It's one of those things that you notice if you're in a space where there is a lot of kind of straight romance books, and I think you have to work a little bit harder as a queer book occasionally. So I think it's a mindset thing of putting yourself into a character's shoes, which can be trickier sometimes, perhaps. It feels terribly insulting saying that out loud. But I think the barrier to buying into a romance is different for everybody. And that's something that I want to diminish through the writing and the storytelling and the characterization.
Absolutely, yes. There is, circling back to fantasy worlds, kind of this weird insistence on historical accuracy that says queer people can't exist in these spaces, which is
completely wrong.
Wild because, one, there are elves and dragons here, so historical accuracy is out the window.
Yeah.
And two, we have existed for all of history.
Yep.
I can show you precisely where. Come along with me on this journey through a book.
Yes, let me show you. It's so frustrating. And I find this is the thing that annoys me with fantasy, especially, is like, there's a dragon here, there's a wizard. It doesn't matter. None of this matters. And I do quite enjoy fantasy that kind of subverts that idea that it has to be historically accurate in other ways as well, like through language or the technology they have or things like that. Like the one I'm reading at the moment is fantasy, and a lot of it does feel quite modern, and that's really fun. It's a historical style fantasy, but it doesn't necessarily buy into all the ye old fantasy tropes, which is really exciting. And you think, we can accept that there's a wizard here, but we can't accept that there's gay people? What?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. I think a lot of people have a preconceived idea of what fantasy looks like, and for most people that is something like Lord of the Rings, which arguably is super gay.
Sir Ian McKellen would agree.
Yeah, it's that idea of everything has to be in a certain way, which is really limiting for fantasy, both in terms of the characters you can have in it and the way you can write it and the plots you can have. And it always really frustrates me because I'm like, I don't care if this person to you seems historically inaccurate. It's a fantasy. It doesn't matter. Go along with it. As long as it's not ruining the vibe for you, then go along with it. And if the vibe is ruined because there's a gay person, then that's your problem and you should leave. I am willing to overlook an awful lot if I find the characters compelling. And I feel like for me this is the biggest flaw. This is the main reason I'll put a book down, is the premise can be great or the idea can be great, but if I don't find the characters compelling, then I'm out. Whereas everything else could be terrible, but if the characters are great, then I'm here for it. Which makes me probably a bad person to cast judgment on these sorts of things because I'm weak. So I'm like, oh, okay, I've turned my brain off. I'm not thinking about these things anymore. But also to say, but I am having a lot of fun.
I would concur.
And to not lean into the very tempting narrative of, therefore, the people who don't agree with this thing are wrong and bad and are reading incorrectly, because I think that is the dangerous way. And down that road lies, complaining about those TikTok girlies and all of that. And I'm like, no, 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 we don't do that here.
What are some themes that you love to explore or revisit in your writing?
A lot of these come up without me realizing, which is weird. So often things like loneliness comes up quite a lot, anxiety comes up a lot, relationships with one's father comes up quite a lot. Yeah, these things do keep cropping up. I think a lot of things about self-awareness and self-discovery come up quite regularly. It's tough because ultimately all of them are, and then we fell in love. And it's all the bits that come around that and the different circumstances that lead people towards that. Something I've noticed while drafting up the next book is birds happen a lot. There's a lot of bird imagery, and I think that might be because I really like birds. I hit 30 and became a bird person. And then, yeah, that circles around quite a lot. Things like cynicism for hiding your true feelings, these sorts of things. And then just like on top of everything, a big heaping scoop of like queer ice cream.
Yes.
Which is just like, everyone is queer all of the time forever. Which, even if I wanted to stop, I couldn't. So...
I will say I did appreciate the very tender and sensitive yet historically minded portrayal of Ash's trauma and PTSD in A Vow Made Twice.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to kind of really find a way around that. I wanted to make it seem believable, but not too kind of modern therapy speak. Because I find when a character has an understanding of their illness that we would have, I find that kind of jarring. So for researching him, I spent a lot of time kind of looking up first-hand accounts. I read a lot of threads on Reddit, which I find Reddit is always extremely useful for character research, of people talking about their own experiences, because I wanted to make it feel realistic but not overly clinical. I did the same thing for another character who has a hearing impairment and a visual impairment, and I wanted to be accurate and to feel accurate in that. I went online and I looked up people who have these disabilities and what their everyday life is like after they've gotten used to it. And yeah, it's tricky finding that balance because, especially for Ash, like, he doesn't know what's wrong. He doesn't know what's going on, just that this is a thing that's happened to him and is happening to him. And I wanted him to be able to kind of think about that and talk about it without it suddenly becoming like a Wikipedia lesson in PTSD.
I think you did strike the very delicate balance between our modern body of knowledge versus the historical character's understanding of their experiences.
Yeah, and I think this is something I've been thinking about recently with another thing I just read of striking that balance between historical accuracy and reader understanding and realism, and how you can use all the completely accurate wording and descriptions you want, but if the audience doesn't understand you, then they're going to flounder. You know, with medieval stuff especially, it's really hard to make sure you're not getting too deeply into certain things. Like, I had a long debate with my first editor about clothing and what to call certain clothes, which, as said, I've had mixed responses from people saying, oh, that's not accurate. And I'm like, the point isn't whether it's accurate, the point is when a reader reads it, they know what piece of clothing is coming off and whether or not they should be excited about that without having to then like Google it or something. Because I think for me, if I don't understand something, I won't even necessarily look it up. I'll just skim past that whole paragraph and I won't know what's going on until I suddenly find a place where I do understand what's going on. And I think that can be really jarring for an audience.
What drew you to your subgenres?
So, historical specifically, I found I was writing a lot of fantasy fanfic at the time, and the thought of writing contemporary just filled me with dread. I didn't want to write contemporary, but I also didn't really want to write fantasy because the world building scared me. And I wanted swords, I wanted campfires, I wanted the aesthetics and the knightliness. And so I kind of landed on medieval because purely for aesthetic reasons, really. And up till that point, I'd read pretty much exclusively historical romance anyway, but it was all, you know, Regency, Victorian-ish, as most of it is. And so it was a bit of a step out of the time zone I was reading in. But historical has always appealed to me, like I was saying before. The contemporary, often I feel it's too much like real life and I can't get lost in it in the same way. So I knew it was historical from the get-go because I was like, no, I can't write about people with iPhones. I'll go mad. And then the romance it's always been there. I think romance is what made me want to write again. Before I got back into fan fiction, I had sworn off fiction forever and I hated it and I refused to write. And then writing romance made me go, oh, actually, this is fun. I remember why I like doing this so much. And it became, you know, more than just writing stuff down. It was friends and it was audience and it was a community. And I think it was so much fun. And I'd forgotten what fun could be like when you're writing. And so now I'm kind of in this niche and I'm like, oh, this is great. I don't know why I didn't think of this years ago.
I wonder how many historical romance writers have that same love fantasy, world building, daunting, let's do historical where the world is already built.
Yeah, I imagine a lot.
I went down that very same route.
It's just too scary. I think at the time I was like, I don't want to put a dragon in it. And I think fantasy requires a lot more thoughtfulness about the kind of the setting and the world. For me personally, that's less time I've then got to think about the characters.
Yes.
Which I didn't really want to do. And especially when I was writing Heartswood, I was writing that to a deadline. And it was something like 50,000 words. No, 70,000 words in 6 or 7 weeks, something like that. It was mad.
God damn.
Yeah, and I was already snowed under the historical research, and the idea of doing world building on top of that, I was like, no, that's not happening.
No, thank you.
So I did kind of trap myself when it then came to the point of, oh, we'd like 2 more books. I was like, okay, this is fine. I'm just medieval forever now, I guess. But yeah, I imagine a lot of people like historical because it's the fantasy without it being fantasy. And I mean, all romance is a fantasy at the end of the day. Even like the office romance set this year is a fantasy because no one really acts like this in real life.
Quick sidebar. I was watching Heated Rivalry with some friends recently. So it opens with like, you know, hockey players playing on hockey teams, but for legal reasons it can't be the NHL. So it's not the Boston Bruins, and being Massachusetts natives, my friend immediately turns to me and goes, is this an alternate universe? And I was like, I mean...
I mean, it basically is, isn't it?
I mean, the sense that all fiction is an alternate universe, yes, because it's not reality, but like,
kind of.
Yeah, I guess Heated Rivalry takes place in an alternate universe. And the Boston Bruins not being called the Boston Bruins is enough to allow this beautiful love story to happen.
If it was called something else, then it wouldn't have happened.
For want of a nail.
No, I love that. It is. It's basically an AU.
What advice do you have for aspiring authors?
I think my biggest advice is to get really, really into something and then write an awful lot about it.
Yes.
That's what I did. I got really into a specific pairing. I wrote like a million words of fanfic and it hones it. And I mean, I think there's a lot of argument about whether or not fanfic is a good pipeline into writing. And I think, pros and cons. I think it doesn't necessarily set you up for writing, creating characters and creating plots that you need to then convince people to like. But it does really set you up for writing things like dialogue or character beats and emotions and sex scenes, which are really, really hard to write. But finally, putting a sex scene in your book that's going to be published is so much easier when you've written about these two other people doing it like 1,000 times already. And I think, it takes out a lot of the fear. I think if you're just like, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to do it, let's go, it can be really intimidating. Whereas just being like, I'm going to do this fanfic about this thing I like, post it online, whatever, the lack of barrier to entry and the ease of it removes a lot of that fear. And I think that was one of the things I struggled with before Heartswood came out, was that I was scared that I wasn't good enough. And I was scared of starting because, oh God, you don't want to start the thing and then you won't finish it. And there was a lot of like pressure that I put on myself about it. Whereas fanfic is this kind of pressure-free, do what you want, fun, low-stakes writing. And I think it's important for people to be able to do that, because otherwise you'll just elevate the thing you want to write in your head to such a degree that you'll be too scared to even think about it. And you also have the addition of things like fanfic tends to come with a built-in community. You can meet other writers, you can meet artists, and like having this big community of creatives around you is so inspiring. And if you're like me, you can then get really lucky and say, hello, friend I met through writing about these two guys fucking in inns. Could you read my novel for me? And they might say, yes, I will read your novel for you and tell you how it is. And, all of it comes together and it can be really useful. And I think in terms of actual practical advice, for me, I think that's something that works rather than just saying, oh, make sure you write every day. It's a bit wishy-washy. But find a thing you're completely obsessed with, write 50,000 words about it. It's a good way in.
It's a good start.
It is, it really is. And it makes it so much less scary. If you're only ever writing things with the intent that they're going to be great works of art, or that they're going to get published, or that it's going to be the next big thing, then it's just too scary and nothing will get done. But if you write stuff with the intention of delighting you and a handful of other weirdos, then it's easy and it's fun, and you miss all that fear.
I would co-sign this, yes. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to touch on?
A Vow Made Twice is coming out in February, which is very exciting. And also, once again, you know this now, but The Secret in Stars, very few people have found it. So, putting that out there for anyone who's read Stars, that there is an Easter egg in there for A Vow Made Twice, and very few people have found it. So go find it, and I will, big you up on Instagram.
You will have my sword if you can find it, because, I came so close.
You were so close.
I came so close. I was like, wow, what a really cool detail you've put into this story. I appreciate it. Anyway, no thoughts head empty. Have a great day, Emma.
The problem is, this is how I read as well, so if I was reading it, I probably wouldn't have picked up on it. And writing it, I was like, oh, this is so obvious, everyone will know. But no, which shows how utterly in my head about it I was.
Oh, man. In the meantime, while people are waiting for A Vow Made Twice and whatever else you have coming next, where can they find you?
Scattered all over the place. I am on Instagram as Emma Denny Writes, and I'm on TikTok, same handle over there, Emma Denny Writes. I use TikTok slightly less regularly because TikTok is kind of scary. I am also on Tumblr, obviously. I feel like I shouldn't necessarily give out my Tumblr handle, I don't know. Come and find me. If you can find me, I'll be pleased.
A little quest for you.
Yeah, a quest. It will be a really easy quest, but a quest nonetheless. I also have a website, which is just emmadenny.com, and a newsletter, which you can find via the website. If you've not read any of them, you can also get the first chapter of One Night in Heartswood for free on my website. And I will soon, at some point, be posting the prologue to A Vow Made Twice. So that'll be going up as well. So everyone can get into the Ash Angst Fest as a little appetizer before it comes out.
A little treat.
Yes. A treat for us, not for Ash.
So many things are a treat for the reader and never for Ash. That poor
No, it's
man.
never. At the very end, it's a treat for Ash.
At the very end. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Emma. This has been wonderful.
It has. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
And to you, dear listener, thank you for joining us. And we will have another episode of Right Here, Right Queer for you next week.